The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber stretched across the sky like a frozen ocean. Inside, 12 of the most advanced species in the known universe had gathered for a very special meeting. Today, they would decide if humans were smart enough to join their group. Ambassador Kang Taemin stood at the center of the Great Hall. His black suit looked very small compared to the giant beings around him. Next to him, Dr. Yoon Sora held a datapad with shaking hands. She had studied alien life for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The first speaker was from the Viridian Prime. It looked like a walking mountain made of green crystal. When it spoke, beautiful music filled the air instead of words. The translation device in Taimin's ear turned the music into speech. "We have watched the humans for 50 of their years," the crystal being sang. "They are still very young, very emotional. They cry over small things. They fight wars, over pieces of dirt they call countries." The other council members made sounds that seemed like laughter. A creature that looked like living silver water rippled with amusement. "Yes, they even die for these pieces of dirt. They call it patriotism. How foolish." Taimin felt his face grow hot with anger, but he kept quiet. He had been a soldier before, becoming a diplomat. He knew when to fight and when to wait. Dr. Yoon Sora stepped forward. "Honored council members, may I present our scientific achievements?" She activated her holographic display. Images of human cities, spaceships, and medical advances floated in the air. A being made of pure light flickered with what might have been boredom. "Your technology is adequate for such a young species, but technology alone does not make a species ready for the council. What concerns us," said another voice, "is your emotional weakness." This speaker was the strangest of all. It had no fixed shape, changing from one form to another every few seconds. Sometimes it looked like a tree, sometimes like a cloud, sometimes like nothing at all. "You humans feel too much," the shape changer continued. "You make decisions based on love, fear, anger, hope. These emotions make you weak. They make you stupid." The crystal being's music grew louder. "We have seen your soldiers throw away their lives for flags and songs. They die for words written on paper. This is not logical. This is not evolved." Taemin could not stay quiet anymore. "Those soldiers died protecting people they loved. They died so that others could live free. How is that weak?" The council chamber fell silent. Then slowly, the laughter began again. It came from all directions at once. The crystal beings made harsh, grinding sounds. The liquid creatures bubbled and splashed. The shape changers twisted into forms that looked like human faces but with mouths open in mock surprise. "He proves our point," said the light being. "Even now he becomes emotional when we speak truth. Look how his face changes color. Look how his hands shake with anger." Dr. Yoon Sora placed a gentle hand on Taemin's arm. She had seen him lead men into battle without fear. But here, surrounded by mockery, he was struggling to stay calm. "Ambassador Taemin speaks from experience," she said carefully. "He served in the Korean War Memorial Division. He has seen sacrifice and courage firsthand." "Yes, we know his record," said another council member. This one looked like a giant brain floating in a glass case. "He watched his friends die for a peninsula that means nothing to the rest of the universe. He calls this noble. We call this waste." The brain creature's voice was cold and mechanical. "Humans cling to their past like children with toys. You still fight over ancient borders. You still cry over ancestors who died centuries ago. You still sing songs about pieces of cloth and call them sacred." Taemin thought of his grandfather who had fought in the Korean War. He thought of the flag that covered his grandfather's coffin, and how his grandmother had held it tight and cried. These aliens called that weakness, but Taemin knew it was strength. It was memory. It was love that lasted beyond death. "Perhaps," said Dr. Yoon Sora, "our emotions are not weakness but strength. They help us work together. They help us care for each other." The shape changer became a perfect copy of Dr. Yoon Sora, but with an expression of exaggerated sadness. "Oh, how touching, how primitive. We have moved beyond such needs." You work together because you must, said the crystal being. We work together because we choose to, based on logic and mutual benefit. We do not need tears and hugs and pretty speeches. The liquid creature formed itself into the shape of a human soldier saluting. Then it collapsed into a puddle, pretending to be dead. The other council members found this very funny. This is what your emotions lead to, said the brain creature. Death, waste, suffering. We have evolved beyond such foolishness. Taemin wanted to shout. He wanted to tell them about Seoul, about the children who played in parks because soldiers had died to keep them safe. He wanted to tell them about his friend Dongsu who had jumped on a grenade to save his squad, but he knew they would just laugh harder. We understand your concerns, Dr. Yoon So-ra said diplomatically, but perhaps you could give us a chance to prove ourselves? The council members spoke among themselves in languages that sounded like music, static, and wind. Finally, the crystal being spoke again. Very well. We will place humanity on probationary observation status. For the next 200 years, we will watch you. If you can evolve beyond your emotional weaknesses, perhaps we will talk again. 200 years? Taemin asked. A very short time, said the light being. Barely enough for you to begin growing up. The brain creature floated closer. Use, this time wisely. Learn to think instead of feel. Learn to calculate instead of hope. Learn to survive instead of sacrifice. And perhaps, added the shape changer, now looking like a wise old human with a long beard, you will become worthy of joining civilized society. The meeting was over. As Taemin and Dr. Yoon So-ra walked back to their small ship, they could still hear the council members laughing behind them. They think we are children, Dr. Yoon So-ra said quietly. Let them think that, Taemin replied. Children grow up, and when they do, they sometimes surprise their elders. Neither of them knew that in just 3 months the galaxy would face a threat that would make all of them very grateful for human emotions. Neither of them knew that humanity's greatest weakness would soon become the galaxy's greatest hope. But somewhere in the darkness between the stars, ancient enemies were already moving. And when they arrived, the universe would learn that sometimes the most logical thing to do is to die for something you love. 3 months had passed since the humiliating meeting at the Galactic Council. Ambassador Kang Taemin was back on Earth, filing reports that no one wanted to read. The message was simple. Humanity was not welcome among the stars. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Captain Lee Dongwoo was having breakfast in his quarters aboard the HSF Determination when the alarm started screaming. He jumped up so fast that his coffee cup fell to the floor and broke into pieces. The hot liquid spread across the metal deck as red lights flashed everywhere. Captain, to the bridge, came the urgent voice over the ship's speakers. Priority Alpha emergency. Dongwoo ran through the corridors of his ship. Crew members rushed past him, all heading to their battle stations. He had been in the human space force for 15 years, but he had never heard a Priority Alpha alarm before. Those were reserved for threats to all human life. On the bridge, Communications Officer Park Ji-hai was bent over her console. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking as she adjusted the controls. Report, Dongwoo ordered as he took his captain's chair. Sir, we are receiving distress signals from across the galaxy, Ji-hai said. Her voice was tight with fear. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. From who? Everyone, sir. The Viridian Prime Crystal Beings. The Nebula Collective. The Arcturus Republic. Even some species we have never heard of before. Dongwoo felt cold fingers crawl up his spine. What are they saying? Ji-hai pressed a button, and alien voices filled the bridge. The translation computers worked overtime, turning strange sounds into human words. Help us. They came from the dark space. They eat everything. Our weapons do nothing. Please help us. Our worlds are dying. The devourers consume all life. Logic provides no answers. We need assistance. Emergency broadcast to all species. Ancient. Enemy has returned. Request immediate military aid from any available forces. The messages kept coming. Proud species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years were begging for help like frightened children. Young Private Kim Min-ho, barely 19 years old, was working at the sensor station. His home was a small farming village in Korea, and he still missed his mother's cooking. "Captain," he said in a quiet voice, "I am detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of our sensor range." "Show me," Dongwu ordered. The main screen lit up with a tactical display. At first it looked like empty space. Then the computer enhanced the image, and everyone on the bridge gasped. Ships filled the darkness between the stars. Not hundreds of ships, not thousands, millions of them. They were black as the void itself, and they moved in perfect formation toward the galaxy's heart. "What are those things?" someone whispered. Ji-Hai was listening to her earpiece. "Sir, I am getting more information from the distress calls. The aliens are calling them the Devourers. They say these creatures have been sleeping in the dark space between galaxies for millions of years. And now they are awake," Dongwu said grimly. The bridge door opened and Dr. Yoon Sora stepped inside. She had been working on Earth, studying the data from their council meeting. Now she looked tired and worried. "Captain, I came as soon as I heard," she said. "The council species are in full panic. Their entire way of thinking is failing them." "What do you mean?" Dongwu asked. "They fight wars using pure logic. Every move is calculated. Every strategy is based on mathematical probability. But these Devourers are different. They do not think like normal life forms. The aliens cannot predict what they will do." Ji-Hai looked up from her console. "Captain, incoming transmission from the Viridian Prime homeworld." The screen changed to show the crystal being that had mocked humanity just 3 months ago. But now its beautiful green surface was cracked and dim. Its musical voice was broken and scared. "Human vessels, this is Prime Crystal Veltar of the Viridian Council. We require your assistance." Captain Dongwu stood up slowly. 3 months ago you told us we were too emotional to join civilized society. Yes, we may have been hasty in our judgment. You laughed at our soldiers. You said dying for others was stupid and wasteful. The crystal being's light grew even dimmer. "Please, our people are dying. Our logic-based defenses have failed completely. The Devourers destroyed 3 of our colony worlds in 6 hours. Dr. Yoon Sora stepped forward. "How many species have fallen?" 17 so far. The metallic swarm of Proxima was consumed in less than 4 hours. The collective mind of Andromeda could not coordinate a defense fast enough. Every species that relies purely on logic has failed. Another voice joined the conversation. This one belonged to the shape-changing creature that had mocked human patriotism. "We do not understand how to fight an enemy that does not follow logical patterns. Our computers cannot predict their moves. Our strategies fail because they do things that make no sense." "Like what?" Dongwu asked. "They sacrifice their own ships to destroy our defensive positions. They throw away tactical advantages to save their captured comrades. They fight harder when the odds are against them instead of retreating." Private Kim Min-ho looked confused. "But sir, those sound like things humans would do." The aliens on the screen seemed to realize this at the same time. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Finally, the crystal being spoke again. "Yes, they fight like you do, with emotion instead of logic. And that is why our logical responses fail," added the shape changer. "We need someone who understands irrational behavior, someone who thinks with their heart instead of just their brain." Captain Dongwu looked around his bridge at his crew. These were good people, farmers' sons and city daughters who had joined the Space Force to protect Earth. They were exactly the kind of emotional, illogical humans the aliens had mocked. "What are you asking us to do?" he said. "Save us," the crystal being whispered. "Please. We were wrong about your emotions being weakness. Maybe they are strength." Dongwu thought about his orders from Earth Command. Humanity was supposed to stay in their own solar system. They were not supposed to get involved in galactic politics, but people were dying out there. Innocent people who needed help. Jihai, open a channel to Earth Command, he ordered. Sir, are we really going to help them? Asked Private Kim Min-ho. After how they treated us. Dongwu smiled. Min-ho, what would your mother say if someone came to your village asking for help? The young private thought for a moment. She would feed them and give them a place to sleep. She would help them even if they had been mean to her before. That is the difference between us and them, Dongwu said. We help people because it is right, not because it is logical. The transmission from Earth Command came through quickly. Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen, looking grim but determined. Captain, we have been monitoring the situation. The President has authorized Operation Helping Hand. We are sending every available ship to assist the galactic species. Even though they rejected us from their council? Dr. Yoon Sora asked. Especially because of that, the Admiral replied. We are going to show them what human emotion really means. As the HSF Determination changed course toward the first battle zone, Captain Dongwu felt a familiar feeling in his chest. It was the same feeling his grandfather had described before shipping out to fight in Korea. Pride mixed with fear, hope mixed with determination. The aliens thought emotions made humans weak. Soon they would learn how wrong they were. The first human ships arrived at the Kepler defense grid just as the battle was turning into a disaster. Alien fleets that had ruled space for millions of years were running away like scared animals. Their perfect formations were broken. Their logical battle plans had failed completely. Marine Sergeant Choi Sung-min stood in the transport bay of the HSF Seoul, watching the chaos through the viewports. Explosions lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks. Alien ships twisted and burned as Black Devourer vessels tore through their lines. Sergeant, we have our orders, said his radio operator. Command wants us to establish a defensive perimeter around evacuation point Charlie. Sung-min looked at his squad of 12 Marines. They were young men from all over Korea. Factory workers, students, farmers. None of them had ever fought aliens before, but they all had the same determined look in their eyes. Listen up, Sung-min said. Those evacuation ships are carrying 3 million civilians. Alien civilians, but civilians just the same. Our job is to keep the Devourers away from them until the transports can jump to safety. Private Joe Kyung-ho raised his hand. He was only 18 and still missed his girlfriend back in Busan. Sergeant, how long do we need to hold them? 18 hours, minimum. The Marines looked at each other nervously. Through the viewports, they could see Devourer ships the size of cities moving toward the evacuation point. 18 hours against that, whispered Private Bae Young-sik. We have held worse odds before, Sung-min said calmly. Remember the stories. Our grandfathers told us about the Korean War. Remember Heartbreak Ridge, remember the Chosin Reservoir. Korean soldiers have always known how to hold the line. On the bridge of the alien command ship Logical Harmony, Captain Zeth-9 was watching the human Marines prepare for battle. Zeth-9 belonged to the Rational Collective, a species that had eliminated all emotions from their minds centuries ago. Tactical analysis, Zeth-9 said to his computer. The human defensive position is mathematically indefensible, the computer replied in a flat voice. 12 soldiers cannot hold against an estimated 4,000 Devourer ground forces. Probability of success is 0.001%. Then why are they not retreating? The computer was silent for a moment, processing data. Unknown. This behavior does not match any logical military doctrine. Down on the surface of Defense Station 7, Sergeant Sung-min and his Marines were digging in. They had set up their weapons in a circle around the evacuation pad, where thousands of alien families were waiting for transport ships. The aliens looked very different from humans. Some were tall and blue with extra arms. Others were small and covered in fur. Some looked like walking plants or living rocks. But they all had one thing in common. They were scared, and they were protecting their children. Incoming! Shouted Private Lim Tae-wook from his position on the perimeter. The Devourers came like a black wave across the barren ground. They moved on 6 legs and had teeth like metal spears. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness, and they made sounds like screaming metal. Open fire, Sung-min ordered. The Marines began shooting with everything they had. Plasma rifles cracked like thunder. Grenades exploded in bright flashes. But for every devourer they killed, 10 more took its place. The battle lasted for 6 hours before the first Marine fell. Private Kim Jae-won took a devourer claw through his chest while protecting a group of alien children. As he died, he smiled and said, "Tell my mother I did my duty." The alien observers watching from their command ships could not understand this. Their computers recorded everything, but the data made no sense. Why did the human smile while dying? Asked Captain Zeth 9. Analysis inconclusive, replied the computer. The subject's brain chemistry showed satisfaction and peace instead of fear and regret. More human ships were arriving at other battle zones throughout the galaxy. Each time, the pattern was the same. Human soldiers would take positions that alien computers said were hopeless. They would fight longer than mathematics said was possible, and they would win battles that logic said they should lose. Pilot Nam Woo-jin was flying his fighter through the wreckage of an alien fleet when he received an urgent message. A Devourer command ship was approaching the refugee planet Sanctuary, Prime. The planet held 2 billion civilians and had no defenses. "This is Flight Leader Nam to all squadrons," he said over the radio. "I am going to ram the command ship. My fighter has enough antimatter to crack its hull." "Nam, that is suicide," his wingman replied. "You will never survive." "I know," Nam said calmly. "But those people down there will live. That is what matters." The alien commanders listening to the human radio channels were shocked. Their own pilots would never volunteer for certain death. It was not logical. It served no purpose for the individual. But Nam Woo-jin thought about his sister, who was a teacher on Earth. He thought about her students who would grow up safe because he made this choice. He thought about the Korean flag painted on his fighter's wing, and the words his father had taught him. A true warrior protects those who cannot protect themselves. He flew his fighter straight into the massive Devourer ship. The explosion could be seen from orbit, and the command vessel broke in half and died in space. Back on Defense Station 7, Sergeant Sung Min had been fighting for 16 hours. His squad was down to 6 Marines. The evacuation was almost complete, but the Devourers kept coming. Private Lim Tae-wook was badly wounded but refused to leave his position. "Sergeant," he said through gritted teeth, "why are we doing this? These aliens called us stupid and weak." Sung Min reloaded his rifle and looked at the alien families still waiting for transport. An alien mother was holding her baby close, just like his own mother had held him when he was small. "Because it is right," he said simply. "Because someone needs to stand between the monsters and the innocent people. That is what soldiers do." Dr. Han Bo-young was aboard the alien observation ship, studying the human military tactics. She had been sent by Earth Command to understand why human strategies were working when alien logic had failed. "I think I understand now," she told the alien commanders. "You fight to win. We fight to protect. You retreat when the odds are bad. We fight harder when people are counting on us." Captain Zeth 9 looked at his screens showing human forces across the galaxy. Everywhere, human soldiers were doing impossible things. They were holding positions they should have lost. They were winning battles they should have fled from. "Your species is not logical," he said to Dr. Han Bo-young. "No," she agreed. "But we are something better. We are human." On Defense Station 7, the last transport ship was finally ready to launch. Sergeant Sung Min had 4 Marines left, and they were almost out of ammunition. But they had done it. 3 million aliens were safe. As the transport lifted off, carrying the families to safety, the surviving Marines watched it disappear into hyperspace. They knew more Devourers were coming. They knew they probably would not survive the next wave. But they also knew they had saved 3 million innocent lives. And for humans, that made all the difference. The galaxy was beginning to understand that human emotions were not weakness. They were the strongest force in the universe. New Sol Station hung in space like a giant metal flower. It was humanity's pride, a space habitat where 12 million humans lived and worked among the stars. 2 million alien refugees had joined them after fleeing from the Devourers. Now, all 14 million souls were trapped. The Devourer fleet surrounded the station completely. Hundreds of black ships formed a deadly circle, their weapons charging for the final strike. Every escape route was blocked. Every defense had been destroyed. Private Jang Hyun-woo pressed his face against the viewport of Fighter Bay 12. He was 20 years old and came from a small mountain village in Korea. His father grew rice and his mother made the best kimchi in 3 provinces. He had joined the Space Force to see the universe, but now he wished he was back home helping with the harvest. All fighter pilots report to Briefing Room Alpha, came the announcement over the station's speakers. Hyun-woo walked through corridors filled with scared people. Human families sat together, holding their children close. Alien refugees who had lost their own worlds looked out the windows at the approaching doom. Everyone knew this was the end. In the briefing room, Station Commander Baek Jin-seok stood before 30 fighter pilots. His uniform was torn and dirty from the battle. His face showed the weight of knowing he could not save the people counting on him. "The situation is hopeless," Commander Baek said quietly. "Our shields will fail in 2 hours. The Devourer consumption beams will turn this station into nothing but empty space." The pilots sat in silence. They were young men and women who had dreamed of exploring space, not dying in it. "However," the commander continued, "we have one option. Our scientists have loaded Fighter 7 with experimental antimatter charges. If someone can get close enough to the Devourer command ship, the explosion might damage their fleet enough to create an escape window for the evacuation pods." Pilot Lee Soon-ho raised his hand. "What are the chances of survival for the pilot?" "0, Commander Baek said honestly. "This is a one-way mission." The room fell silent again. Hyun-woo looked around at his fellow pilots. These were good people. They had families waiting for them on Earth. They had lives to live and dreams to follow. "I will do it," Hyun-woo said, standing up slowly. Every head in the room turned to look at him. Commander Baek studied the young pilot's face. "Private Jang, you are only 20 years old. You have not even been married yet." "That is exactly why I should go," Hyun-woo replied. "The married pilots have families. The older pilots have done more with their lives. I am just a farm boy from the mountains." Pilot Park Mi-young, who was sitting next to him, grabbed his arm. "Hyun-woo, you do not have to do this. Someone else can volunteer." But Hyun-woo was already walking toward the door. "My sister Oh Soo-jin works in the civilian section. She is a teacher here on the station. If I do not try to save everyone, she will die. All the children she teaches will die. I cannot let that happen." In the alien observation ship that had been studying human behavior, Dr. Go Yun-bi was monitoring all communications from New Seoul Station. She was a xenopsychologist who had spent years trying to understand how different species thought and felt. "The young human is volunteering for certain death," she told the alien commanders around her. "I want to study his brain patterns during the mission." Captain Zeth-9 of the Rational Collective looked confused. "Why would you waste time studying someone who is about to die?" "Because he might teach us something important about consciousness itself," Dr. Go Yun-bi replied. An hour later, Hyun-woo was strapping himself into Fighter 7. The maintenance crew had loaded the small ship with enough antimatter to destroy a city. The fighter's hull was cracked from previous battles and its engines were barely working. His sister Soo-jin came to see him before he left. She was 22 and looked just like their mother when she was young. She had been teaching alien refugee children how to read Korean. "You do not have to do this," she said, tears running down her face. Hyun-woo hugged her tight. "Remember when we were children and you were afraid of the dark? I always turned on the light for you. This is just a bigger light switch. I love you, little brother. I love you too. Take care of those children you teach. Tell them that someone from the Korean mountains kept them safe." As Fighter 7 launched from the station, every person aboard watched through the viewports. The small, damaged fighter looked like a tiny insect flying toward a giant spiderweb of enemy ships. Dr. Go Yun-bi monitored Hyun-woo's vital signs and brain activity. Her instrument showed something that shocked her. The young pilot was not afraid. His heart rate was steady. His brain waves showed calm determination. "This is impossible," she whispered. "He is flying toward certain death, but his mind is at peace." The Devourer ships began firing at Fighter 7. Plasma beams and energy missiles filled the space around the small fighter. Hyun Woo rolled and twisted his ship through the deadly storm, using every trick his instructors had taught him. His radio crackled with voices from the station. Fighter 7, you can still turn back. Find another way. Negative, Control, Hyun Woo replied calmly. I am exactly where I need to be. As he flew closer to the massive command ship, Hyun Woo thought about his childhood in the mountains. He remembered running through rice fields with Soo Jin, catching fireflies on summer nights. He remembered his father teaching him to fish in the cold mountain streams. He remembered his mother singing old Korean songs while she cooked dinner. The Devourer command ship grew larger and larger in his viewport. It was the size of a small moon, covered with weapons and armor. This was the brain of the entire enemy fleet. More enemy fire struck Fighter 7. The cockpit filled with smoke and the controls sparked with electrical fires. Hyun Woo's left arm was badly burned, but he kept flying. Why is he not afraid? Dr. Go Yunbi asked her instruments. Why is he not trying to save himself? The answer came to her as she watched the young pilot's face on her screens. Hyun Woo was smiling. Not a smile of madness or desperation. A smile of pure happiness. In his final moments, as Devourer weapons tore his fighter apart piece by piece, Jang Hyun Woo thought about the Korean flag painted on his fighter's wing. He thought about the anthem his grandfather had taught him. He thought about Soo Jin and her students who would live to see another day because of his choice. He thought about his village in the mountains, where his parents would be proud that their son had done his duty. He thought about the thousands of generations of Koreans who had stood against darkness to protect their people. For Korea, he whispered. For Earth. For everyone who cannot fight back. Fighter 7 struck the Devourer command ship at full speed. The antimatter explosion lit up space brighter than a star. The massive enemy vessel broke in half and its fleet began to retreat in confusion. From New Seoul Station, 14 million people watched a farm boy from the Korean mountains save them all. And across the galaxy, every species that had mocked human emotion fell silent in wonder. They had witnessed something they thought was impossible. They had seen someone die with a smile, happy to give his life for others. The universe would never be the same. The antimatter explosion from Fighter 7 created a chain reaction that spread through the entire Devourer fleet. Their command ship broke apart like a shattered glass bottle, and the smaller vessels began retreating into the darkness between stars. For the first time in the war, the ancient enemy was running away, but the real victory was not happening in space. It was happening inside the minds of every alien species that had witnessed Private Jang Hyun Woo's sacrifice. Dr. Go Yunbi sat in her laboratory aboard the research vessel, staring at the data from Hyun Woo's final moments. She had been a xenopsychologist for 15 years, studying how different species thought and felt. But nothing had prepared her for what she had just recorded. The readings make no sense, she told her assistant, Dr. Ryu Jae-sung. In the moment of death, his brain should have shown fear, pain, regret. Instead, it showed joy, pure, complete happiness. Ryu Jae-sung was a poet and philosopher before he became a scientist. He understood human emotions better than most. Maybe that is exactly what we should expect from a human. But why? Go Yunbi asked. Why would someone be happy to die? Because he was not dying for nothing. He was dying for love. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening on 1,000 different worlds. The crystal beings of Viridian Prime had watched the battle through their harmonic sensors. For the first time in their million-year history, they felt something new stirring in their crystalline hearts. Prime Crystal Veltar, who had mocked human patriotism just months before, called an emergency council meeting. We must discuss what we have witnessed, his musical voice sang through the crystal chambers. The human died with satisfaction, sang another crystal being. This should not be possible according to our understanding of consciousness. Perhaps our understanding is incomplete, Veltar replied. The other crystals resonated with shock. Veltar had never admitted being wrong about anything. On the homeworld of the Nebula Collective, billions of gaseous beings that shared one giant mind were experiencing something they had never felt before: individual thoughts, personal feelings. Some of them were even developing names for themselves instead of just being part of the whole. Collective Node. 7 Alpha spoke for the first time as an individual. I want to understand what the human felt. I want to feel it myself. That is not logical, replied the central mind. Individual consciousness leads to chaos. Maybe chaos is better than emptiness, Node 7 Alpha said. Around the gas clouds, other nodes began to agree. The collective mind that had existed for 10 million years was starting to break apart into separate people. The changes were not limited to the aliens who had fought in the war. Even species that had never met humans before were affected. The Brau, quantum mathematicians of Rigel 7, who existed as pure thought without physical bodies, suddenly found themselves wanting to experience physical sensation. The hive queens of Tau Ceti, who had never felt anything for individual lives, began to mourn every worker who died. On Earth, Ambassador Kang Tae-min was reading reports from across the galaxy with amazement. Every species was changing. Some were developing emotions for the first time. Others were learning to value individual life over collective logic. It is like watching the universe wake up, he told his wife over dinner. Hyunwoo's sacrifice did not just save those people on the station. It changed how every thinking being understands consciousness itself. 3 months later, Dr. Go Yoon-bi published her research in a paper called Emotional Consciousness Evolution: How Witnessing True Sacrifice Triggers Evolutionary Leaps. The paper became the most important scientific document in galactic history. When an intelligent species witnesses genuine self-sacrifice, she wrote, something fundamental changes. In their understanding of existence, they realize that there are things more important than individual survival. They discover that love for others can be stronger than fear of death. The paper explained how Hyunwoo's smile in his final moments had been recorded by every alien sensor in the battle zone. That image, that moment of pure human emotion, had spread across the galaxy faster than any virus. The universe itself seems to favor consciousness that can love something greater than itself, Dr. Go Yoon-bi concluded. Species that develop this capacity become more than just thinking beings. They become truly alive. 6 months after the battle, the Galactic Council met again. But this time, it was very different. The crystal beings now sang with harmonies that expressed personal feelings. The gaseous entities had formed individual personalities within their collective. Even the logical brain creatures had started making decisions based on intuition instead of just mathematics. Prime Crystal Veltar stood before the assembled species and did something that had never happened in galactic history. He apologized. We were wrong about humanity. His music sang with notes of shame and respect. We thought emotions were weakness. We thought logic was the highest form of consciousness, but we have learned that logic without love is not consciousness at all. It is just complicated programming. The shape-changer who had once mocked human patriotism took a form that looked like Jang Hyun-woo in his final moments, smiling as he flew toward the enemy ship. This human taught us that the greatest logic is sometimes to do something completely illogical, the shape-changer said. He showed us that the smartest thing a thinking being can do is sometimes to stop thinking and start feeling. The vote to admit humanity to the Galactic Council was unanimous, but the Council offered something more than just membership. They offered leadership. You must guide us, said the floating brain creature that had once dismissed human sacrifice as wasteful. We have been thinking for millions of years, but you have taught us how to live. Ambassador Taemin stood before the council with tears in his eyes. He thought about Hyunwoo, a simple farm boy who had changed the universe without even knowing it. We accept, he said, but not as your leaders, as your partners, as your friends. 1 year later, memorials to Private Jang Hyun-woo stood on every member world of the new Galactic Alliance. Alien children who had never heard of Korea or Earth would gather around these monuments to hear the story of the human soldier who died smiling. The crystal children of Viridian Prime would sing songs about sacrifice and love. The gas cloud children of the nebula worlds would play games about protecting others. Even the logical young ones of the brain creatures would solve puzzles about when it was smart to be foolish. Dr. Ryu Jae Sung, the poet-scientist, wrote the words that were carved on every memorial. Here stood a farm boy from the mountains of Korea, who taught the universe that the greatest wisdom is to love something more than yourself. The universe had mocked human emotion, calling it primitive and weak. It had dismissed patriotism and sacrifice as the foolish behavior of an undeveloped species. But in watching one young soldier die with a smile for his beliefs, the universe discovered something wonderful. Emotions were not bugs in the programming of consciousness. They were features. They were what turned mere existence into meaningful life. And in every corner of the galaxy, beings who had lived for millions of years without ever truly living finally understood what it meant to be alive. The farm boy from Korea had given them more than victory over an ancient enemy. He had given them the gift of the human heart,